And that, kids, is why redheads don't deserve rights. And now, are there any questions, comments, concerns about today's lesson? Yes.
So, like, I know that redheads have been, like, totally canceled or whatever, and rightfully so, but why hasn't, like, George Washington been canceled yet?
Canceled?
Yeah, like, I get that George Washington was, like, the first president of the United States and helped colonists get away from, like, the religious intolerance of the British or whatever, but, like, he owned slaves and he enabled the oppression of minorities and women, so I just don't think we should stan.
Stan? Well, you have to take into account that the social, political, and cultural climate of the 18th century and 19th century is completely different than it is today. Slavery was something that was super common back then, and that doesn't make it okay at all. But if we hold up these historical figures to a 21st century lens, we won't be able to see any of the good they did for the society at their time. All we can do now is observe their past wrongdoings and see how we can use that as a platform for us to learn not to repeat those actions. And if we were to label one person as good or bad, then we'll never have anything good.
Dang.
See, guys? I'm glad we could have this discussion about this topic. I know it's...
I guess you're canceled too.
What?
Yeah, you're canceled. Man, and I really liked this class.
I probably shouldn't have started this video out with a skit because in reality it is a sort of serious video about a topic that I find very intriguing. But I also have no idea how to start a video off other than that, so it's what we're gonna get. Before I get into what I want to talk about in this video, I would like to preface this with saying I'm not canceling anyone. If you came here for a video where I'm like, oh, this is why I hate this little mouse boy, and this is why I hate this little mouse boy, and I never want you to like this little boy, and this is why you shouldn't. That's not what I'm doing here. What I'm trying to do is prompt an open discussion about a topic that has broader implications but has had some specific scenarios that have come up as of recent. And for the topic that I'm going to be talking about, I'm not an expert on it. I'd also like to say that. I'm not an expert on it, but I have done some research. I read some articles. I browsed the internet for some reliable sources on the topic because I didn't want to speak blindly on it. I didn't want to talk about something that I had nothing to say about because I didn't know anything about it. So I'm going to be taking what I learned and integrating my own opinion to start a discussion that I think is very important. I didn't want to be uneducated, and if I am, please you can call me out for it because I always want to make sure that I'm learning if I'm trying to help other people learn and discuss. I can't do that if I don't have all the information myself. And the last part of the preface is I am not trying to enable any racist, sexist, homophobic, any of those sort of remarks. All of those statements are never okay. They are never acceptable and should not be tolerated, and people should be held accountable for it, but they need to be held accountable in the right way. And that's what I want to discuss today. So recently there's been a lot of people, especially social media influencers, who have been called out for certain actions that they've taken in their past. More specifically than actions, it's been stuff that they've said online and posted. The two main examples that I'm going to be calling upon are Cody saying the N-word in one of his vines. I'm not going to include it in the video because I don't think it's necessary to. And Kurtis using a derogatory slur for gay people in 8 years, a while ago. I'm also not going to include those tweets because I don't think it's necessary. So because of these two things, a lot of people online have taken it into their hands to try and cancel Cody and Kurtis. These two situations are exemplifications of something called cancel culture. And that's not something that like Stan Twitter coined, it's not something that like social media coined, it's like an actual thing. Like if you talk to like media professors, which some of the people in the articles that I read did, it's an actual like social media caused phenomenon, I don't know. Let me whip out these articles. Okay, so for the video, I'm going to be calling upon some articles that I read, and I'm going to include the links to the articles in the description. I completely encourage you to research your own stuff on cancel culture and how it's like positive, negative impacts, things like that. Because, hey, I didn't get to read every single article out there. I only got 4 or 5. And I'm sure that there's others with different perspectives, different information that could enlighten me, enlighten others. So go ahead and research that, and if there's something that you think here I'm not describing well, that you've read somewhere else described better, send it to me like in the comments or something. I'll read it because I really do want to learn. So in the article by Odyssey, they describe cancel culture as when people who have said or done problematic things, either now or in the past, are decidedly canceled and people no longer support them or their endeavors. So there's one way of defining cancel culture. Most of the definitions do go along those lines. I'm sure you can find one on Urban Dictionary. I'm sure you can find one from plenty of other articles. I know a lot of the articles defined it in their own terms that were along those lines. And as I've already said, cancel culture is something that's like very, in my opinion, and I think from what I've gathered from the articles, fueled and caused by social media. Because if you take a step back and look, social media has completely changed like the culture of society. And maybe we don't recognize it, especially people who are my age and even like I'm Gen Z or whatever, and millennials, just people around my age, because we have grown up on social media, or at least seen the growth of social media as we have gotten older. And social media has caused there to be a major societal shift in the way people are held accountable for actions or things that they have said. One of the things that social media has caused is they've caused a lot of people to get famous, but famous solely because of the attention that they get. If they did not have the attention, they wouldn't have a job. And in one of the articles from New York Times, it talks about this as the attention economy. One of the things that the New York Times article draws upon is a quote from this guy named Jason Richards, who one time wrote an episode of Joanne the Scammer, which I'm not talking about Joanne the Scammer in this video, okay? You can think whatever you think about them. I'm simply just using a quote from the person who wrote this episode because it's super fitting for what we're talking about with cancel culture. And what they were saying is about what the word cancel, like why they use it in such a term applied towards like humans and their careers. And that the humor in it is that to cancel a human is kind of just like very harsh, and that it speaks to a lifestyle of commodity consumerism and capitalism, which I think is a super good way of putting it, because that's what it is. Like, people who are brought up on social media and are famous because of social media, it's super dependent on consumer intake and like capitalized culture, and it's crazy. And I think that's something that's like crazy to think about, but it's also super important to think about how it's all packaged and that they have to produce content for us to intake at all times, and that if they produce the wrong thing or say the wrong thing, it can completely backfire on them. And because of the scrutiny that social media like enables from like mass amounts of people can get canceled super quickly. It's like a horde of people on the internet just like conglomerate or like come together or something, and they just focus all of their attention on one person and dethroning them from their position of power in the attention economy. And it's so important to make sure that people are being held accountable for their actions, whether they were recent, like that morning, or 8 years ago. Obviously, it's really important for present events for them to be held accountable, but even for past actions, we want to hear from that person that they have acknowledged what they said, why it was wrong, and see how they've grown. The problem is that cancel culture doesn't really give the people that room they need to grow. That's like a big theme throughout all of the articles I read, is it's very stifling, cancel culture. Because the way cancel culture is approached is not as a discussion, it's as more of like an attack. Like, you cannot support this person because of this thing they said, and they don't try to save the person or help that person realize, hey, this is the problem and this is how you need to address it and why it's wrong, and help them grow as a person and learn. Instead, it kind of like, I don't know how to say it, but it kind of makes them like the poster head for the bigger problem that they're trying to attack, whether it's like racism or religious intolerance or any sort of thing like that. So they make that person like the poster head for it, and they're like, hey, if we attack this person and get this person to stop like having a positive attention from the media, then we've kind of like helped the problem in a way, or helped solve the problem. But in reality, it is like helping the problem, because cancel culture doesn't really attack any issues at its roots. What it does, it's like, if we're using like the metaphor of roots and plants and stuff, the people who say problematic things are like petals on the flower, and cancel culture is just taking off those petals and taking off those petals and blah 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 blah. But the petals are going to grow back because the roots are still there. So a more effective way of going about someone saying something problematic, whether in the present or in their past, is to hold them accountable and to be like, hey, you said this thing and it was really offensive or wrong, and this is why, and this is how we need to approach a situation like this in the future. We need to show them that, hey, you've made a mistake, but we want you to grow and we want you to learn from it. And in one of the articles, I can't remember which one, I could pull it up right now, but I feel like it's going to take too much and my brain is going. It says that cancel culture is indiscriminate. So, but what it means by that is someone could say, comparatively, something small compared to something really big or a really big action. One of the articles was saying like, the Me Too movement, very big, sexual assault, not okay, ever at all. And then cancel culture will take something like that and then say like one small statement from 8 years ago on Twitter, and it uses the same level of canceling on both of them. And I don't want to talk too much on that point because I feel like I'm not educated enough to speak on that. But I do think it's interesting to observe, and that it's something that I want to learn more about and other people should think more about. So if we approach these situations with more patience and empathy, what we're going to do is we can help people who deserve to be forgiven. And whether you think someone deserves to be forgiven, that's like more of a personal thing. I can't establish the line to which something is unforgivable and which something can be forgiven. That's like a personal thing. Everyone has different experiences and morals and thoughts, and it's going to be a case-by-case scenario or a case-by-case basis, I guess. But you do need to take the time to be like, okay, is this action something that they can learn from and recover from and be forgiven from if we see that they've learned and see that their actions correspond with their apology or their words or like their growth. Because to keep attacking people like we do with cancel culture, it doesn't allow the people who are like trying to help to exercise any empathy or proper conflict resolution. So not only can it inhibit the people who like perpetrated the action, it can really help the people who are trying to do the canceling. It just inhibits everyone in a sense. One last thing I'd like to touch on, which I kind of already did with the whole taking a step back and reevaluating the situation, is that a lot of the times morality is now viewed as a dichotomy of like good versus bad. And in the article by Odyssey, it talks about how situations are always in shades of gray, because you always need to analyze the context of which something was said, like the time, the social climate, because the social climate can definitely affect why something was said. Doesn't make it excusable, does not make it okay, but it can provide you with context which you can use to teach the person why what they said was wrong and how to change their mindset to something that's more acceptable and open and correct. And correct isn't really the right word. Like, I don't know. Like, I have like the emotion behind the words, and then sometimes the words just aren't coming out right, which I hope is fine because I'm not always, like, I try to be as articulate as I can in this topic, but it is something that I care about a lot, and I've written down like a lot of stuff for it, but I'm just afraid that like I'm not being as articulate as I should. And for that, I do apologize. I want to make sure that I'm saying everything with as little bias and as much good information as I can, while also trying to integrate my own opinion, which I know opinions are inherently biased. So for me to say I want to be opinionated and also be unbiased is kind of like conflicting. But I don't know. I just want to have a discussion about this. I think it's really important to talk about, especially in an age where so many people have been like bred off of social media and are famous because of social media and attention, and how their whole livelihoods can depend on if people are consuming the products that they're putting out. So bringing it back to the whole Cody Ko and Kurtis Connor situation, are they canceled? I don't think I can say, because as I said earlier, the line for which things can be forgiven and things cannot be forgiven is a personal thing that's on a case-by-case basis with every single individual that has been affected by the situation. All I can say is that I'm not canceling them. I've been trying to keep caught up with the situations. Kurtis already extended like an apology on Twitter, and I think it was a good apology, and from just how Kurtis is as a person and like his actions, he's very genuine. So I'm going to continue to support Kurtis because I believe he has grown in these past 8 years. I think that his actions and his sense of genuineness like really showcase that growth. So I don't think I can't go out and like cancel him. And I know for the situation with Cody, a lot of people are upset that the apology was issued on their Patreon for their podcast rather than on Twitter. And that Cody was like, it's a public post so anyone can see it, but a lot of people won't think to go look on Patreon. So that whole thing is up to you to decide on. I have like a Cody Ko sweatshirt and like a long sleeve. I'm not gonna go out and burn it in a riot because that Cody Ko sweatshirt is super soft and it was a gift from a friend. So I would not do that. But I am going to give him time. I'm going to see how the whole situation plays out. If his actions speak on behalf of his apology, awesome, he's grown. That's great. But I think what we need to do is take these situations as they are and use them as a platform to help influencers to grow. Because they're all people. They're not just robots who are used to like make products for us to enjoy. They're people too. And I think we need to keep that in mind and hold them accountable for their actions, because what they said, what was said, was not okay. And I'd like to just make that clear. I do not condone any of what was said, but we need to hold them accountable in the right way. and help them grow so that they can be better people, better influencers, and we can learn how to approach these situations in the future, and everyone can be fine and as great as we can possibly be in this situation. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I just really wanted to have a discussion about this, and I know it's not really a discussion because I'm just talking to my camera right now. And I know a lot of people might give me hate for this. I might get a lot of backlash even though I don't have that many, but if it were to like gain traction, it's definitely something that could, you know, do some harm for me. And I know I tripped over my words a lot and I wasn't as articulate as I could be, but I genuinely did try to educate myself to the fullest on this topic, and I want to make sure that I continue to educate myself and don't close myself off to other like areas of conversation. So if there's people who comment things that differ from me, I'm definitely going to read them and try to keep taking them to account, but I don't want anything to be personal attacks because I'm not trying to personally attack anyone. I just want to educate myself and try and educate others and share my opinion and just have a civil, open discussion, which I don't know if that's possible on that platform, but I would like to have a civil discussion about this and just talk and just talk. So if Cody and Kurtis are watching this, thank you guys for apologizing. I really hope you guys have been given the room to grow and learn from this situation because it's what everyone deserves. Everyone deserves to be able to learn and grow and be better people. And I just hope that the pressure from the social media hasn't taken that chance away from you. As for everyone else, if you'd like to subscribe or block me or unsubscribe because you hate what I'm talking about, you could do any of those things. You could do any of those things. Like or dislike this video. I don't know how you think. Comment. It'd be really cool if you guys could comment your own opinions. If there's something that you think that I need to better educate myself on in this video or that I could have said better, let me know. I do want to learn. I keep saying that, but I want to learn. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a super casual video. I don't know what else to say, so I'm gonna go now. Bye! Don't hate me forever!